Hey guys, it's Jackson here from Titanic Games, and today what we're going to be doing is going over how to get started with creating a saving and loading kind of system for your game. It's going to be, I guess, relatively basic, and by basic I mean it's not going to cover like dynamically created or destroyed objects, because really that starts to get into like some high level stuff, or I guess high level, I don't know, but more difficult for sure, and there's a lot of ways that you can go about it, which just kind of change depending on your needs. So I'm just going to stick with the basics for now, and hopefully sometime in the future we might expand upon it and kind of go into more of those more advanced techniques, I guess. One thing I did want to point out, if you are going to be doing any kind of I don't know, crazy saving and loading of all sorts of dynamic things and like AI and spawn locations and stuff, I highly recommend checking out this save system here by Rama. He's really good at making stuff, and his save system here is pretty awesome. But anyway, that's one thing you can do. So enough talk, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to point out is that I'm using 4.14 right now. 4.15 is out, but I'm going to be sticking with 14 for now because I just figure a lot of people are probably going to, well, might not update right away. So it should still work though. I would imagine it would. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to right click in the content browser, create a new folder, call it save game, and then I'm going to open it up, and we're going to right click and create a new blueprint class. Now basically any kind of saving and loading that you're going to do, you need to have what's called a save game object. So we're going to click the all classes drop down, and we're going to search for save game. So we'll choose this guy and select it. I'm going to call this BP underscore my save game. So we'll go ahead and open it up for now. I'm not going to do anything yet, but just so you can see what it looks like, it's literally just a very empty graph. I pretty much only ever use this for just storing the variables that I want to save. Okay, so and we'll get to that in a second. So here we go. There's our save game object. We've got it. Great. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our character, and we're going to add some variables that we can save. So we're going to say edit. Here we go. We're inside of our character. Okay. And we're going to add a health variable. So I'm going to add a variable we'll call health. Okay, change this to of type float. Compile and save. Alright, and then we're going to give it a default of say 100. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to go into our save game, and we're going to add any kind of variables associated with the variables that we want to save from our character. Okay, so basically that's like one of the, I guess, essential things with saving games, right? Anything that you want to be able to save, you need to have the same variable inside your save game as you do in the location or in the class of, you know, of what you're trying to save. Okay, so if our character has like a ton of different variables, like, you know, health, stamina, I don't know, magic, or like maybe he's got ammo, or a list of spells that he can cast, you know, or maybe a bunch of different objects that he can equip, you know, like, I don't know, items that he can attach to his body, like armor and stuff, right? All of that kind of stuff, any variables that you have for it, you need to have the same variables inside your save game so that you can just kind of, you transfer them over back and forth. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to add a variable here called player health. We're going to make this a float. Awesome. Now, rather than just doing something really stupid and simple like that, we're also going to do like saving our player's location and rotation and stuff like that. So we'll say player location. Okay, so we'll save. We'll make that a vector. Make both of these editable too. Okay, then we'll say player rotation, and then we're going to add control rotation. And I'm going to kind of show you guys what all these do. And then we're going to add one more here called player velocity. Okay, so you don't need to use all these in your game. I'm going to change the two rotation ones to rotators. But sorry, as I was saying, you don't need to use all these. You know, really the most important ones are probably, well, really just the location. That's probably one of the most important when you're saving things. But player rotation could come in handy. Control rotation is like would be like the actual rotation of your mouse or gamepad, right? And then player velocity would be like the velocity that your character is moving at when he saves, right? It's just kind of, I'm just trying to show a couple different, you know, varieties of things that you can save. So anyways, we'll go into our third-person character now, and let's go ahead and get started setting up the rest of the saving. So basically, what you want to do is, when the game begins, right, you want to check if you have a save game. Okay, if you do, then you're going to load it. All right. So we're going to go here, we're going to right-click and say Event Begin Play. All right, and we're going to drag out and say, does save game exist? Now you're going to see it takes in a slot name and a user index. Okay, slot name would be the actual file name of the the save file that you want to have. Okay, so when you save games in Unreal Engine, what they do is they go into your project folder. So I'm going to go to the project name, and they go into the saved. And once you create a new one, there's going to be a saved games file that gets added. So we'll see that later. Okay, so I'm going to give this like a default name of, I'll just call it default. We'll right click, promote it to a variable. I'll call this save slot. Okay, now we're going to take return value and do a branch. And if the save game, or if it exists, then what you want to do is load it. Otherwise, you want to create it and save it. Okay. So let's go ahead and do the false first. Go ahead and say create save game object, and then for the class we'll select our save game. Now this creates just a save game reference. It doesn't actually create a reference to that specific instance of the save game. So because of that, we need to cast to our save game that we've created, and then we can promote that to a variable so that we have a reference to it. So we'll call this save game reference. Alright, perfect. And then the last thing that we'll do is drag out and we'll say save game to slot. Now save game to slot takes in a save game reference like that, or it takes in a save game object, so we can plug that in, and then we'll take our save slot and plug that in as well. Okay, compile and save, and we'll just do a quick little print string here just for debugging. So we'll say select string off the back of this, plug in A, or pick A for there, and we'll say successful save. I might have spelled that wrong, but whatever. Otherwise we'll say failed save. Okay, so there we go. There we are creating our save game object. Now we need to load it. So to load it, you just say load game from slot. Pretty simple. Take your save slot, plug that in. Now it's gonna again just get a save game reference. All right, it's gonna get the reference of the save game object that was used to save to used to save to this file location. So because of that, we need to cast again. So we'll just copy everything over there like so. We need to cast, and then we can create another little function here to load all of our variables. So let's go ahead and do that. And yeah, we'll create a function that we're going to call load and set saved variables. Okay. Now what this will do is it'll take we'll have our save game reference, and now with that we can get all the variables from it. So we'll say get player health. Okay, we'll say get player location, or velocity, I guess we'll do that one now. Get player location. Okay. And then we'll get the last two. Get player rotation. And get get control rotation. Okay. Now one thing you might want to do is create like a struct that you could call like save info or save variables, right? And then just have a structure that you use for to contain all these variables, so you don't have to like do this, but this works for now. Okay, so anyways, what we'll do is, so these are all the variables that are inside of our save game, okay? Not on our character. So we're taking the ones that we've saved and we're going to use them to set the ones on our character. So we'll drag out and say set health. That's the first one. Then we'll say set actor location and rotation. Okay, I guess I'm not really going in order here, but so we'll plug in the location and rotation. For the velocity one, we need to get our character movement here. Say set velocity, I believe. Yeah, I want to say this is right. Plug that in. And then the last one here, whenever you want to set like a control rotation, you need a reference to your player controller. So we'll get our player controller, add index 0, and we'll say set control rotation. Here we are. Plug that guy in, and there we are. Okay, so lastly, I'm just going to add a little print string to say, you know, loaded, or we'll just call it loaded game. Okay, so now we'll go back to our event graph, and we can add that in. So there it is. So next, let's go ahead and we're going to actually take all this and collapse it into its own function. So right click, say collapse to function, and we'll call this load game. Now, you know, if you're going to have like multiple save slots, right, what you might want to do is, you know, you might want to make an input here of type string, right, and then you could call load game from wherever, and then, you know, enter in whatever kind of save slot you want. But since we're not doing that, we're just going to stick with the our hard-coded save slot name here. So compile and save that, and there we go. So next we need to add the save game logic. So to save, so let's go ahead and take this save game object. I'm going to hold Alt click to break that. I'm going to take everything here and right click collapse to function. We're going to call this save game. Going to open it, and again with the the whole slot thing, you could do this same exact thing with the save slot, right? Add an input. So anyways, take the same game reference, plug that guy in there, and then we're going to move this a little buddy here way out of the way because we have a bunch of stuff to do. So first thing, let's get our save game reference, and what we need to do now is take all of our variables on our character and set the variables in our save game reference. So this first one will say set health, or set player health. Okay. Then we'll say set player location. Alright. Then we'll set player velocity. We can do that one next. We will set player rotation. And then the last one we'll do is set control rotation. Okay. So you can just plug all these in like so. Awesome. Okay, and now we just need to add the values that we're going to save. So we'll take our health, plug that guy in. For the player location, we're going to say get actor location. Plug him in. For the velocity, we'll say get velocity, and this gets the the velocity vector of our character itself. Okay, and then player rotation, we'll get the player get actor rotation. There it is. Now this last one, we're going to get our control rotation. All right. So now, after we've set all those, we'll immediately save. Okay, so always make sure that you're setting the variables right before you save. Don't set them afterwards, because otherwise, it won't save them. All right, so we have that. Now what we can do is add some little kind of debugging buttons. So first one, I'm going to choose. How about we'll use Q to save the game. Okay, I'm going to right click, go down to input. There it is. Go to keyboard events, and we're going to find the E key. The reason I'm not searching for it is because there's like millions of words with the letter E in it. It's impossible to find. But anyways, E key will be for loading, and so we can do that now. So we'll say save game, and then we'll say load game. Okay, so essentially what this is going to do then, when we start, is it's going to check if this save slot exists, which it doesn't right now. Okay, so it should go off on this chain and fire and say, successful save. But then the next time that we, open the game, it should say, this ending part here, loaded game. Okay, so we'll go ahead and test this out now. All right, so let's press play. And you see in the top left there, it just said, you know, successful save. All right, and now if we close it and we press play again, it'll say loaded game. So there we go. So we already know that it's working. Okay, so if we go look in that file location, right, you'll now see that inside the save folder, this new save games file is added. So if we open that, you'll see that default save file was there. And you know, if you recall that whatever this name is, you know, it's going to correspond to the name of your slot name. Okay, so this is default. What did I even say? Yeah. And so that's why this one is now default. Okay, if you change the name, let's change it to new save. Compile, save. We have to press play. Okay, successfully saved. So it's successfully saved. So now the new one should be there. I don't know why I just closed it. That was dumb. Easy enough to find though. All right, so there it is. Right, our new save file is there, and this is only 1 kilobyte. So I mean, it's really small. Okay, so there's really not much overhead to this. There really only starts to be a lot of overhead once you're like saving a lot of information at once. So like, you know, a lot of different maybe AI locations, rotations, you know, kind of what tasks they're doing, or saving like the states that dynamically spawned objects are in, or, you know, if you've destroyed things, you know, stuff like that, right? That can be a pain to try to save it all correctly, and it kind of, you know, it adds to the overhead. But right now it's lightning fast. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can go ahead and, you know, now we loaded our game, so we can go test this out. Okay, so right now if I run over here and I hit E to load, it'll move us back there. Okay, so let's come up here now and we'll hit Q, and we just saved. Okay, so now because of all the variables that we set up, right, we set up the actor rotation, the actor location, and the control rotation, right? Those three are going to be what determines our actor's rotation, our actor's location, and the position of our camera when we load the game. So if I'm aiming this way now, and my character is rotated, how about this way? Okay, I'll be like this, and now if I hit E to load, you see that it reset everything to how it was. Okay, now if you don't like, you know, that, you can totally tweak the values. For example, if you don't have like the player rotation or the control rotation set up, right, we'll see how that looks. Okay, so we just won't even save it in the load game. Well, I guess it won't even, it will technically not load. So here we'll just, yeah, we'll just press play and we'll see. So you see that it did load back there because it saved it in the past, but if we save a new one and hit E, right, it's going to load, it's going to load the previous, or, you know, whatever the settings were for the default control rotation and player rotation, which if you know, when you start the game, right, it looks like this. So that's what it would normally be if you're not saving it anywhere. Okay, so just keep that in mind, I guess. But we're going to plug that back in because I like it. All right. And now we do have this velocity one, so let's see that one in action. So I'm going to hit play. Here we are. Okay, so the velocity one, the way it works is it saves whatever your character's velocity is when they're moving. Or, you know, yeah, whatever their velocity is, just in general, not only when they're moving. But so if we jump in the air and press Q, we just saved. Okay. Now normally if you're not saving the velocity, it'll load you up there and it'll just drop immediately. But since we're saving velocity, if we hit E, it continues our velocity out like that. Just like so. So it's kind of cool. You can almost use it to just float forever. I was screwing around the other day with it, and if you catch it at the right upward velocity, you can keep saving and loading and eventually get over the wall by glitching it out. It's kind of cool, but just one thing to demonstrate there. So if you just keep saving and loading, well, kind of worked. Anyways, yeah, that's all you really have to do to set up your save game. It's pretty straightforward, I think, pretty simple once you kind of get a grasp of it. Let's see, one last thing I can cover right now is let's look at deleting games now. So if we right click, I'm going to add the R key. Okay, so to delete a game, it's really pretty simple. Okay, I'm going to drag off and say delete game in slot, and then you plug in the slot name. And what this will do is it'll actually delete the file from that save games folder. Okay, so it'll completely get rid of it. All right, and we can do a little print string here just to see if it works. Actually, I'm going to do a select so we can give it a little bit more descriptive string. Okay, so we'll say deleted file for A, and we'll say failed to delete for B. So compile and save again, press play. Well, okay, so that's another thing that I got to point out there. When you press play, right, you see how he's in the air like this? That's a little bug that I'll address in a second. So anyways, if we press R now, it should delete that save game. So we hit R, we just deleted it. Okay, so now if we hit E to load, it's not going to load anything because there's nothing to load, right? The file doesn't exist. So if we hit E and then press play, it'll load us at the default player start. Okay. So now to address that kind of issue that we had where we were in the air and we just fell, right? Whenever you save a game in the air, right, whether or not you're calculating velocity or not, when you close the game and then restart it, at least for me, I always experience this thing where he's just stuck in the air and, you know, he falls weird. So what you can do is add some, you know, little branching, I guess, node here to check if certain conditions are met before you can save. So we'll do a branch, and we'll go ahead and we're going to create a function for this. So we'll add a function. It's not wanting to add right now. Not sure why. Okay, there we go. Say can save. We're going to add an output of type Boolean. Just call it return value or something. All right, and with this, you know, you can make any number of you know, conditions to check before you can save. So the one that we're going to check right now, though, is if we're in the air. So we'll get our character movement. We'll say is falling. All right, and then if we're falling, well, we want to do the not of it. So if we're not falling, then we can do it. Okay, and if you're going to add, you know, more conditions, just use like the and Boolean. Okay, and then just plug that in instead. All right, so we can go back out to the event graph. We can take our can save, move that in here. We're going to make it pure and then const. Plug it in. If you don't know what pure and const means, it basically just, you know, makes this a pure blueprint node, and const ensures that we're not changing anything inside of the function. We're purely just getting variables from it. So that's just a brief explanation. But anyways, now this should work. So if we press play, we go and we try to jump into the air and hit Q, right? We didn't save until, you know, we landed on the ground when I was pressing it. Okay, so there's no more saving in the air, even though I'm pressing the button a lot. Pressing it, not working. And we can visualize that. I'll just do a little print string. Okay, and if we jump, you see it's printing hello because we're getting that false of the save. But as soon as we land, then we can save all we want. All right, have a jolly good time. Okay, so there you have it. There's how to, you know, set up a pretty simple save game system. I hope you guys liked the video. If you like it, like or subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.